Right now, roughly 1 in 10 people on this planet are carrying a hidden evolutionary fossil inside their brain. It shows up the moment they pick up a pen, swing a bat, or shake your hand. We call it left-handedness, and for centuries we treated it as a flaw, something to correct, something sinister. But modern neuroscience has uncovered something extraordinary. Left-handedness isn't a glitch. It's a survival strategy written into the architecture of the brain millions of years ago. Today we're going to explore exactly why left-handed people exist, how their brains are secretly wired differently, and why evolution never bothered to erase this trait, even though it makes up less than 12% of the population. 1. The bridge between two cities. To understand why left-handed brains function differently, you first have to understand that your brain isn't one single organ. It's two separate hemispheres connected by a thick cable of nerve fibers called the corpus callosum. Think of your brain as two cities sitting on opposite sides of a river, and that cable is the only bridge connecting them. In most right-handed people, one city, the left hemisphere, dominates almost everything. It handles language, logic, and motor control with very little input from across the river. But researchers using brain imaging have discovered that in left-handed individuals, that bridge is often busier, wider, and more heavily trafficked. Information flows back and forth between both hemispheres far more frequently. This isn't a flaw in the wiring. It's a fundamentally different architecture, one where both cities collaborate constantly instead of one simply ruling over the other. 2. The two-language brain. That constant cross-river communication directly shapes one of the most surprising discoveries about left-handed brains: language. For decades, scientists assumed language always lived almost exclusively in the left hemisphere, regardless of which hand a person favored. But brain scans tell a more nuanced story. Left-handed people are significantly more likely to process language using both hemispheres simultaneously, rather than relying on just one side. Imagine a company that keeps all its important documents in a single locked office versus a company that keeps backup copies in two separate buildings. If a disaster strikes one location, the second one. Researchers have observed that this bilateral language processing may explain why left-handed individuals often show unique resilience after certain types of brain injury or stroke. If the left hemisphere, where language usually lives, sustains damage, a left-hander's brain is more likely to already have a functioning backup system on the right side, ready to compensate. 3. The ancient fighting advantage. While that backup system protects the brain internally, an entirely different theory explains why left-handedness survived externally out in the brutal world of early human survival. It's called the fighting hypothesis. For most of human history, violence wasn't rare. It was a constant threat woven into daily survival. In any physical confrontation, predictability is dangerous. If 90% of your opponents are right-handed, you instinctively learn to anticipate a strike coming from their dominant side. But a left-handed opponent breaks that pattern entirely. Their attacks come from an unexpected angle, and the element of surprise becomes a genuine weapon. Anthropologists studying this theory point to a fascinating piece of evidence. In societies with historically high rates of interpersonal violence, the percentage of left-handed individuals tends to be noticeably higher than in more peaceful populations. It's exactly like a predator that hunts using one obvious pattern versus one that strikes unpredictably. The rare hunter has an advantage precisely because it's rare. If left-handedness ever became too common, the surprise factor would vanish. And that's actually a leading theory for why the trait has remained locked at roughly 10% for thousands of years. Evolution didn't eliminate it. It balanced it. 4. The modern echo of an ancient edge. That same advantage that once played out on ancient battlefields has quietly resurfaced in an entirely different arena today: sports. Watch any combat sport, fencing match, or baseball game closely, and you'll notice something strange. Left-handed athletes are wildly overrepresented at the highest levels of competition, far beyond their 10% share of the general population. In professional boxing and fencing, the number can climb above 20%. The mechanism is identical to the ancient battlefield. A right-handed athlete spends a lifetime training against predominantly right-handed opponents, building instinctive reflexes, tuned to that mirror image pattern. The moment a left-handed competitor steps in, those finely tuned instincts misfire by a fraction of a second. In split-second sports, that fraction is everything. Coaches have long understood this intuitively, even without knowing the underlying evolutionary science. The unfamiliar angle that once helped a left-handed ancestor survive a skirmish now helps a left-handed pitcher strike out a batter who has never quite calibrated to that mirrored release point. 5. A trait with no single switch. Given how much advantage and complexity surrounds this trait, you'd expect scientists to have found one clean gene responsible for it. They haven't, and that absence is itself revealing. Unlike eye color, which traces back to a single identifiable, mutation-handedness behaves more like a chorus than a solo. Large genetic studies have identified dozens of different gene variants, each nudging the odds slightly, but no single gene determines the outcome on its own. Researchers studying twins discovered something even stranger. Identical twins who share 100% of their DNA don't always share the same dominant hand. This tells us that something happens before birth, something environmental inside the womb, that helps tip the final decision. Some scientists point to subtle differences in fetal positioning or asymmetries that begin forming as early as 8 weeks into pregnancy, long before the brain itself even finishes developing its hemispheres. Handedness, it turns out, isn't decided. It's negotiated gradually between genetics and the earliest days of development. 6. The toll of a right-handed world. While left-handedness carries hidden advantages, it has also forced an entire population to navigate a world quietly, built around the other 90%. Doorknobs, scissors, school desks, even the spiral binding on a notebook, nearly every object in daily life assumes a right-handed user. For centuries, this physical bias hardened into outright prejudice. The very word sinister comes directly from the Latin word for left, a linguistic fossil revealing just how deeply suspicion toward left-handedness was baked into human culture. Children were once forced, sometimes punished, into writing with their right hand regardless of their natural wiring. Researchers studying historical school records found that this forced switching didn't erase the underlying brain wiring. It simply created confusion, sometimes contributing to stuttering or reading difficulties in children whose natural neural pathways were being overridden. Thankfully, that practice has mostly disappeared, but it stands as a powerful reminder that a trait shaped by millions of years of evolution can't simply be undone with a ruler and a stern teacher. 7. The creative edge. That same cross-hemisphere communication we explored earlier doesn't just offer resilience and unpredictability. It may also explain a pattern researchers have noticed in creative and divergent thinking. Studies examining problem-solving styles have found that left-handed individuals often perform better on tasks requiring them to connect distant, seemingly unrelated ideas. Picture brainstorming as searching through a vast library. A brain with a narrower bridge between hemispheres tends to stick to nearby shelves, pulling familiar logical connections. A brain with a wider, busier bridge wanders further, occasionally returning with an idea that initially seems strange, until it reveals itself as brilliant. This may help explain why left-handed individuals appear disproportionately often among architects, musicians, and inventors throughout history. It isn't proof that left-handed people are inherently more creative. It's evidence that their underlying wiring simply favors a different, more exploratory route to the same destination. So, the next time you watch someone reach for a fork with their left hand, you're not just witnessing a quirk of fine motor preference. You're watching a living fragment of evolutionary strategy, an ancient advantage in unpredictability, a brain built on wider bridges between two hemispheres, and a trait so finely balanced by natural selection that it has survived, unwavering, at roughly 1 in 10 people for thousands of years. It was never a flaw waiting to be corrected. It was always a different, equally brilliant way of meeting the world. If this changed how you see something as simple as handedness, make sure to like this video, drop a comment below telling us if you're left-handed or right-handed, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Stay curious.